I didn't plan for it. I didn't expect it. But the moment I was left alone in the house with the 25-year-old handyman, something shifted. Something real. His hands were rough from work, his eyes steady and searching, and what happened next left me breathless, and changed my life forever. I wasn't ready. Not for him. Not for the way he saw me. Before we begin, thank you to all my subscribers for your love and support. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. Turn on notifications so you never miss another heart-wrenching, dramatic, and inspiring life story. And if you believe in storytelling that heals and reveals, subscribe to help me bring more of these stories to life. My name is Linda Cole, and I'm 56 years old. I've been married to my husband Jim for 33 years. We raised 2 kids, built a life out here in the quiet suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina, and somehow got lost along the way. People look at me and see what they expect. A settled woman, a loyal wife, a mother whose job is done. But what they don't see is the silence. The aching silence that fills a house once the kids are gone and the love stops knocking on your door. Jim is a practical man. He's worked in insurance since before we got married. Reliable, distant, always just a little too tired. Lately, it's like we only talk about things that need fixing, appliances, bills, the gutters. Never about us. Never about what's missing. And a lot was missing. Especially me. It started with a leak under the kitchen sink. A slow drip that echoed louder than it should have. Jim promised he'd fix it, but weeks passed and nothing changed. I got tired of waiting. I wanted something, anything, to feel different. So I went on Facebook and posted in our neighborhood group. I asked if anyone knew a good handyman. That's when a neighbor replied with, "Try Trevor. He's young, polite, knows his stuff. Helped me out last month. Real sweet kid." I messaged him the same afternoon. He answered within minutes, and we set a time for him to come by the next day. I don't know what I expected. But it wasn't him. Trevor showed up right on time, 2:15 p.m. A tall, broad-shouldered man, just 25 years old. Ball cap pulled down low, tan skin, jeans dusty from the job before mine. His eyes were warm, brown, steady. When I opened the door, he gave me a smile that didn't feel forced. "Mrs. Cole?" he asked, wiping his boots on the mat. "Please, call me Linda." He chuckled. "All right, Linda. Let's check out this leak." I stood back and watched him crouched down by the sink, tools clinking as he moved with practiced ease. He asked smart questions about the water pressure, previous leaks, and old repairs. I answered as best I could, but mostly, I was just watching him. Noticing things I hadn't noticed in a long time. The strength in his arms. The gentle tone in his voice. The way he filled a space without trying. When he stood up, wiping his hands on a rag, he said, "I'll need to come back tomorrow with a part. Shouldn't take long. Would you like something to drink?" I offered, not thinking much of it. "Iced tea sounds perfect." We sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea and talking. He told me about growing up nearby, learning everything from his grandfather, and starting his own business after high school. He spoke with passion. No arrogance, just pride. I told him about raising 2 kids, being a stay-at-home mom, and now, mostly being alone. "Your house feels real," he said suddenly, looking around. "Like it holds stories." I smiled. "I guess it does. Some good, some quiet." He looked at me then, not like a stranger, but like a man really seeing someone. I brushed it off. It was just a moment. He came back the next day. And the next. One repair turned into another, broken drawer, loose tile, the door that always stuck. Part of me started inventing things that needed fixing. I started putting on lipstick before he came. Changing into a blouse that fit me better. Something about being around him made me feel alive. Like I was still a woman, not just someone's wife. One afternoon, I offered him leftover lasagna. He accepted. We ate on the patio. The spring breeze played with my hair as we talked about music, childhood memories, and the weird quiet that creeps into a house after the kids leave. You ever think about doing something just for yourself? He asked suddenly. I paused. I used to. I'm not sure I remember how. He tilted his head, studying me in that same way again. That's a shame. You still have that spark. You just don't see it. That line. That simple line. It sat in my chest for days. Because no one had said anything like that to me in years. Decades, even. That was the beginning. The quiet before it all. Before the lines started to blur. Before I let a 25-year-old man make me feel like a woman again. Desired. Alive. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't ready. But it happened. And this is the story of how. It started off innocent, like most dangerous things do. Trevor kept showing up. One repair after another. It was like the house was breaking down just to give me an excuse to see him again. But I wasn't fooling myself. Not really. I knew what I was doing. I knew why I was putting on perfume 15 minutes before he pulled into the driveway. I knew why I found myself opening the curtains a little wider, letting in more light whenever he was near. I told myself it was silly. He was 25. I was 56. Twice his age, married, a mother, and yet, every time he called me Linda in that smooth, respectful tone, I felt something flutter inside my chest like a forgotten melody. Jim, my husband, barely noticed anymore. We'd grown into separate shadows in the same house. He still loved me in his own way, I think. But it wasn't the kind of love that looks you in the eyes. It wasn't the kind of love that touches your back when you're doing dishes or asks how you slept. Trevor, on the other hand, he looked. That's what started it, really. The looking. It was the fourth day he came by. I had asked him to take a look at the attic fan that had been rattling for weeks. It was a hot afternoon, and when he climbed down the pull-down stairs, his shirt stuck to his back, drenched in sweat. You okay? I asked, handing him a bottle of water. He cracked it open, wiped his forehead, and said, hotter than I thought up there. Hope you've got a cool place to hide when summer really hits. I smiled. The kitchen and I have an understanding. I don't cook when it's over 85. He laughed. His smile was easy. Natural. He looked around, then nodded toward the living room. Mind if I sit a sec? Of course, I said, a little too quickly. We sat. Just the two of us on the couch, the ceiling fan humming above. He leaned back, stretching his long legs out in front of him. I sat on the far end, hands folded in my lap, pretending I wasn't nervous. But I was. So, he said after a pause, what's your story, Linda? I blinked. My story? You've got this quiet about you. Like you're used to not being asked about you. I stared at him. No one had ever said that to me. Not Jim. Not my kids. Not even my friends. I guess I don't know. I'm just used to being the one who listens. He nodded, watching me. Well, I think you should talk. You got a voice that deserves to be heard. I felt my face flush. I looked down at my hands. You're sweet, Trevor. But I'm not sure my stories are that interesting. They are to me. Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but full. Full of things you're not sure you should say. I shifted in my seat. You always talk like that to your clients? He grinned. Only the ones who look at me like you do. My breath caught. He said it so gently. No smirk. No pressure. Just truth. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Sorry, he said, leaning forward now, resting his elbows on his knees. Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You didn't, I whispered. And that was the first real crack in the wall. That evening, Jim came home later than usual. I had made dinner, but we barely spoke as we ate. He scrolled through his phone while I told him about the attic fan. I mentioned Trevor by name. Kid's doing half our home repairs lately, he muttered without looking up. He's good at what he does. Sure. As long as he charges fair. That was it. No questions. No curiosity. No, what did you do today, sweetheart? I stood at the sink after dinner, washing dishes, staring out the window. And I thought about Trevor's voice. The way he looked at me like I was still someone worth knowing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, the sound of Jim snoring beside me, and thought about how different things had become. And how different I felt since Trevor started coming around. Not better. Not worse. Just awake. The next day, Trevor came by again. This time, to fix a loose board on the deck. I made lemonade and brought it outside. We didn't talk much at first. Just the sound of the drill, the smell of fresh-cut wood, the creak of the steps beneath his boots. Then, when he finished, he sat beside me on the patio bench, our knees almost touching. You're different today, he said, glancing over. How? Quieter. Sadder. I shrugged. Just tired. From life? I turned to look at him. His eyes were steady, kind. You shouldn't have to carry all that, Linda. My heart thudded in my chest. He reached out and gently touched my hand. Just for a moment. And in that moment, I didn't feel 56. I didn't feel married. I didn't feel invisible. I just felt seen. It was a Thursday. Warm breeze outside. Sky half blue, half forgetting it used to rain. The kind of day that usually meant nothing. Unless you were living through something that made even the air feel different. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not for vanity's sake, those years were mostly behind me. But something inside me stirred, and it wasn't pride or guilt. It was curiosity. Wondering what someone like Trevor saw when he looked at me. Not the lines near my mouth or the gray threading through my hair, but the woman behind it. I dabbed on a bit of blush. Soft pink lipstick. I hadn't worn perfume in over a year, not since Jim forgot our anniversary, but I sprayed a little vanilla on my wrists that day. Not too much. Just enough to remember how it used to feel to want to be noticed. Trevor arrived just before noon. He'd texted to say the deck stairs needed one more screw down, and I didn't even pretend to be surprised. Deep down, I think we both found ways to stretch time, one more fix, one more job, one more reason to see each other. He came through the gate with that easy grin and tool belt slung low on his hips. Afternoon, Ms. Cole. I smiled. It's still Linda, you know. Right. Linda. He said it slower this time, like tasting it. He knelt down by the bottom step. I watched him work from the doorway for a moment, then stepped outside and sat on the porch swing. There was a silence between us, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind that says, we're both thinking the same thing but afraid to say it out loud. After about 15 minutes, he stood and brushed off his jeans. That should do it. I nodded. Want a drink? Lemonade? I've got sweet tea too. Sure, he said. Whatever you're having. Inside, I poured 2 glasses of tea. I could feel him behind me, his footsteps, the way he paused in the doorway. I didn't turn around right away. I just handed him the glass, and when our fingers touched, something electric passed between us. Not lust. Not love. Permission. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight pouring in across the old tile floor. For a while, we didn't say much. Just sipped. Just existed in the same space. Then he looked at me. Really looked. Linda, he said, can I ask you something personal? My throat tightened. I nodded. Are you happy? 3 words. And yet I couldn't answer them. I looked down at my glass. The ice had melted. I used to be, I said softly. I think I still want to be. He leaned in, voice gentler than I'd ever heard. You deserve to be. And I swear I mean that. I should have stopped him. I should have said, Trevor, you're too young. I'm married. This is wrong. But instead, I just whispered, why do you say that? He took a slow breath. Because when I'm around you, I see a woman who's been forgotten. And it's a damn shame. Because if you were mine. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The room swelled with silence, and somewhere inside me, a door swung open. He reached out and touched my hand again. This time, I didn't pull away. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, then slowly, almost asking permission, he stood, stepped closer, and leaned down. I looked up at him, heart pounding like I was 16 again. Like I was about to be kissed for the first time. His lips brushed mine. Soft. Tentative. And then, I kissed him back. There wasn't urgency. There wasn't frenzy. It was slow, deep, almost reverent. The kind of kiss that said I see you. I want you. I respect you. And that kind of kiss is far more dangerous than anything reckless. He pulled back only slightly, eyes searching mine. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yes. I didn't expect to feel this alive again. He stroked my cheek with the back of his hand. You're beautiful, Linda. And that was the moment I broke. Right there in my own kitchen. In the house I'd raised my kids in. The house I cleaned, cooked in, cried in, grew old in. That's where I let myself fall into Trevor's arms. We didn't rush. We didn't go upstairs. It all happened right there, slow, tender, and full of unsaid things. My mind screamed this is wrong, but my heart whispered this is real. And maybe it was both. When it was over, we just held each other. No guilt. Not yet. Just breath and skin and silence. Eventually, he kissed the top of my head and said, I should go. I nodded. Yeah. Probably. But neither of us moved for another minute. Then, he pulled away, gathered his tools, and without another word, left through the back door. I stood alone in the kitchen, tea still sweating on the table, heart heavier than it had been in years. What had I done? And worse, why didn't I regret it? I thought I could tuck it away like an old love letter. Hide it in some dusty drawer in the back of my mind, and carry on like nothing happened. But life doesn't let you forget things that change you. That night, Jim came home later than usual. He kissed my cheek, barely made eye contact, then disappeared into his office with a glass of bourbon and his usual silence. He'd become good at ignoring me, and I'd gotten better at pretending not to care. I stood in the kitchen, scrubbing the same dish over and over, heart still aching with the echo of Trevor's touch. Guilt hadn't fully arrived. Not yet. What I felt was, awakened. Like someone had struck a match in a room I didn't even realize had gone dark. Still, I kept thinking, what happens now? The next morning, I found a text from Trevor. You okay? I stared at it. Typed yes, then deleted it. Typed, we can't do that again, then deleted that too. I ended up just sending. I don't know. He replied. I'm here. I mean it. And I believed him. For the next few days, we didn't speak. I busied myself with chores I hadn't cared about in months. Cleaned out the linen closet. Organized spice jars. Ironed pillowcases. I even baked a pie from scratch. Something I hadn't done since my daughter's wedding rehearsal. But still, every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Felt his hands. Heard his voice saying my name like it meant something. And then, one afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard the back gate creak. I looked out the window, and there he was, Trevor, leaning against the fence like a secret I hadn't buried deep enough. I stepped outside, heart racing. You shouldn't be here. He looked at me, calm and steady. I didn't come for anything. Just had another job in the neighborhood and figured I'd say hi. I crossed my arms. You really think we can just be casual now? No, he said plainly. But I don't want to be the guy who disappears and makes you feel like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, Linda. My throat tightened. I know. He took a breath, glanced toward the house. Is your husband home? I shook my head. He's at work. Always is. He stepped closer, eyes softer now. Then maybe you need someone who's really here. His words slammed into me harder than they should have. Because the truth was, I did need someone. Not just for the loneliness or the ache in my chest. But because being invisible in your own home does something to a person. It wears you down until you forget what it feels like to be wanted. And Trevor? He reminded me. But the risk was real. And it didn't take long before reality came knocking. Literally. 2 days later, Jim confronted me. I had just stepped out of the shower when he appeared in the doorway, holding my phone in his hand. His face was pale. Jaw clenched. What is this? He asked. I froze. What are you talking about? He held up the screen. A message from Trevor I must have forgotten to delete. Thinking about you. Always. Everything in my chest caved in at once. Jim, it's not what you think. Don't insult me, he snapped. Is this why you've been walking around smiling to yourself lately? Baking pies? Wearing perfume? I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Shame wrapped around me like a rope. He looked away. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then, quietly, he muttered, I've been ignoring you for years, Linda. I know that. But this is how you deal with it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't plan it. I didn't go looking for anything. But you found it anyway, he said, shaking his head. He left the room, and I sank to the edge of the bed, towel wrapped around me, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. That night, we didn't talk. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. And for the first time in our entire marriage, I didn't even wonder where he went. I just sat alone in the kitchen, with my untouched coffee, staring at nothing. Trevor texted again later that day. Is everything okay? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because nothing was okay anymore. And yet, something inside me whispered that maybe, just maybe, this crack in the glass wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning of seeing everything more clearly. I didn't expect the silence to feel louder than any argument we'd ever had. Jim didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't even pack a bag and storm out. No, he just drifted into his own separate world, leaving me sitting in the ruins of my guilt. I suppose that's the scariest kind of punishment, indifference. I spent the next few days floating through the house like a ghost. Jim barely spoke. When he did, it was about the thermostat or the mailbox key, never about us. We were like two strangers renting space under the same roof. Trevor kept texting. I'm sorry you're going through this. Say the word and I'll be there. You don't have to face it all alone. But I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had to figure out who I was without the attention, without the guilt, without the escape. And to be honest, I didn't even know anymore. One evening, about a week later, Jim finally sat across from me at the kitchen table. No TV. No glass of bourbon. Just the weight of everything we hadn't said. I've been thinking, he said. I looked up, unsure of what was coming. I don't think I've loved you the way you deserved, he continued, eyes fixed on the wood grain of the table. I took you for granted. For years. My throat tightened. I let myself drift, too, I whispered. I didn't try to fix us either. He nodded. But that doesn't excuse what happened. I know. He let out a long, slow breath. I can't pretend I'm not angry. But I'm more hurt than anything else. Hurt that I didn't see how far apart we'd grown. I blinked away tears. It wasn't just about Trevor. It was about being seen, feeling like I still mattered to someone. His voice softened. I should have made you feel that. We sat in silence again, both staring at the space between us. It used to be filled with laughter, soft touches, inside jokes. Now it felt like a canyon we didn't know how to cross. Then Jim asked the question I feared most. Do you love him? I swallowed hard. No, I said honestly. But I think. I needed him to remind me that I still exist. He looked at me for a long time, and I saw the pain in his eyes, but also something else, understanding. I don't know if we can fix this, he said. But I want to try, if you do. I nodded, tears falling now. I do. He reached across the table, and for the first time in a long time, I took his hand. Trevor showed up at my door 2 days later. He looked the same, young, steady, sincere. But something had changed in me. I stepped outside and met him on the porch. I saw your message, I said. I didn't want you to go through all this alone, he replied. I gave him a sad smile. You were a light in a dark time, Trevor. I'll never forget what you gave me, but I can't keep doing this. Not while I'm trying to rebuild what I almost destroyed. He looked down at his feet, then nodded slowly. I understand. I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve. But it can't be me. A long silence stretched between us, then he offered a faint smile. Take care of yourself, Linda. You too. And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the path like a chapter one had to close. Jim and I started marriage counseling. It wasn't easy. There were tears, confessions, awkward pauses. But slowly, we started seeing each other again, not just as husband and wife, but as two people who still wanted to be seen. There are no clean slates in marriage. Only the choice to keep showing up. Some days are better than others. Some nights, I still lie awake remembering the feeling of Trevor's arms. But more often, I turn and look at Jim, flawed, tired, but still here, and I'm reminded that love isn't always passion. Sometimes, it's just choosing each other, again and again, even after the worst. Final thoughts from me. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt forgotten, unwanted, or invisible, I hope you know your story isn't over. We all make mistakes. We all lose ourselves. But sometimes, the hardest moments are the ones that help us find our way back to who we really are. I'm still learning. Still healing. But I'm not ashamed to say, I lived through it. And I came out stronger. That's the end. Thank you so much to all my amazing subscribers. If this story touched you in any way, please don't forget to like, turn on notifications, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramatic stories. Your support means the world to me, and helps bring more inspiration to others.